Hello and welcome. We're the Aussie Guys. I'm AJ. In Aussie Guys studio on my own, actually. I've been stood up by my co-host, but there might be a familiar feeling on the other side of the world, actually, for this team preview. Very rapt to have, I was going to say, these guys. Well, one of these guys back on again from the Packers Fan Podcast. We had a great time talking to Troy and Wayne last year. And Wayne, we've got you this year. You're riding solo. Well, warm welcome.
AJ, thanks again for having me on the show. And I also have a missing co-host, but the show must go on because football season is going to be here very, very soon.
I know. How cool. Yes. So Finally. And we were just saying before I hit record, the Raiders and Packers are due to play the third preseason game in a couple of hours. Well, from this recording. So anyway, by the time this podcast drops, that will all be said and done. But yeah, getting closer and closer, which is super exciting.
It just seems like it's been years since we've had football. I just, especially how the season ended last year for the Packers, just wanted to get things going again. And finally, it is almost here.
It is almost here. So let's jump in. So yeah, let's have a quick look at 2017. And it was a little bit of a frustrating year for Packers fans. Saw the 8-game streak of playoff berths come to an end with a 7-9 season. Obviously, that was in large part due to the injury suffered by Aaron Rodgers. He missed 7 games with a fractured right collarbone. He did come back with the postseason hopes sort of dangling by a thread, but that loss to Carolina, I think it was the 17th of December, that eliminated the Packers from playoff contention. And then Rodgers sat out the final 2 games to give his repaired clavicle a little bit more time to heal. Incidentally, I thought this was an interesting thing, Wayne, when I was doing the research. In 2017, I was going to say, in 2013, Rodgers actually came back from a broken clavicle the previous year to be NFL MVP. Isn't that interesting?
Can he do it again?
This is the big question. Well, I think he can always do it. We're talking about the best quarterback in the league.
Absolutely we are. And I want to thank you for bringing back all of those horrific memories of how the season went last year. After such a fabulous start, it just went down in flames.
Oh, no. I mean, so what other sort of takeaways were there from, a frustrating year? Obviously, your starting quarterback and the best player on the team, the cog that the whole team sort of revolves around goes out. But what other takeaways were there from 2017?
Well, trying to look, for the silver lining in all of that disaster.
Yep.
I think we knew that once the season was over that changes finally had to be made. And some of the takeaways were that, no, we can't really depend solely on Aaron Rodgers. We have to get that man some help. We have to get some help on defense. In Ted We Trust is no longer a thing because now we've got Gutekunst as the GM and Ted is kind of still a scouting helper. I'm not exactly sure what his role is, but we've got a new GM. We've got a new defensive coordinator. We've let some other players go. Sadly, Jordy Nelson will be wearing the silver and black. And so changes had to be made, and bringing in a new defensive coordinator, Mike Pettin, I've got pretty high hopes that the defense is going to be a lot better. I mean, they were really exposed last year again.
Yes, and we'll certainly talk about that. Now, let's start with Brian Gutekunst because obviously Ted Thompson, he's highly revered, but gone after 15 years with the Packers, but as you said, still in the organization. But the thing that kind of, I think, marked his style was very little action in the off-season. So very little trading, if any, and little action in free agency. But I think the Packer fans got used to that being, and I think also, there was a lot of development through the draft. So, and the Packers have been a strong team really in his era under his watch. So I don't think it has been a really big problem, but interestingly, you say maybe it was the time for change, and Mike Pettin comes in as DC replacing Dom Capers, and straight out of the blocks there was a little bit of change. Jordy Nelson, you mentioned. I'm sure Packer fans have mixed feelings about that because I actually think he's going to light it up this year in the silver and black. I really do, and I feel like it was a little bit premature. It's often hard to kind of lose, your stars, those players you're really fond of.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say the majority of Packers Nation is still reeling from it. We almost can't accept it. We know that we have to move on, and we had to lose somebody because the salary cap can't keep everybody around. And last year, with everything else going wrong, and then, like you mentioned, and thank you for that we missed the playoffs for the first time in forever. That was, I think, the catalyst that really let people know that, yeah, things do have to change. And I do wish Jordy well, because what a stand-up guy, great player. Who knows? Maybe this Packers-Raiders game will be a kind of a preview of the Super Bowl. Who knows?
Oh, I wouldn't mind that at all, and nor would you.
And no would Jordy.
That's right. And so, interestingly, talking about free agency, so a couple of notable additions, apart from a couple of guys that were re-signed, which I won't talk about right now, but Mo Wilkerson comes in. So, I mean, the D-line probably, apart from the pass rush, which I think is an area of need, the D-line probably an area of strength, but Mo Wilkerson just adds to that, which is interesting. And Jimmy Graham, now, tight end, I was talking to a friend of ours who said, oh, Jimmy Graham, that's, Green Bay is where tight ends go to die. Because,
it's true.
It's like tight ends have never really been able to flourish. But then again, I would kind of argue, has Aaron Rodgers ever had a tight end like Jimmy Graham?
No, he has not. And in the past, we've been super excited with some of the free agent tight ends we've brought in, and then sometimes things just went off the rail. But I do think that Jimmy Graham is a very unique and very big tight end, and with a great wingspan, and can catch all kinds of things. And even though last week's game against the Steelers was preseason, just that one touchdown pass just really opened our eyes to possibilities. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to finally have a tight end that he's going to be happy to throw to a lot.
Yeah, so it will be interesting, and I think the wide receiver core plays into that a little bit. So we'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about the draft now. Another interesting thing, maybe a change from what you would have normally expected in the draft. There was a bit of movement up and down, especially in the first round. It was kind of curious. I'm interested to get your take on it, because so the Packers had the number 14 pick. There was certainly talent on the board at 14, but having said that, the Saints, gave up a small fortune, really, to move up to 14. And moving out of 14, and the Packers moved back into 18, paying a little bit to move back into 18. But, you did pick up, in the trade with the Saints, you did pick up a future first, which is always really, really nice. And in the first, picking up Jair Alexander, I don't know if I pronounced it right.
Jair, I believe.
Jair Alexander, cornerback out of Louisville. And then in the second, following that up with another cornerback in Josh Jackson. And I'll just mention a couple of picks and we can talk about it as a whole. But in the third, Oren Burks, an outside backer out of Vanderbilt, who actually looks now to get quite a bit of action in his rookie year. In the fourth, Jamon Moore, wide receiver out of Missouri, and 3 picks in the fifth. So you picked up O-lineman Cole Madison, J.K. Scott, a punter, and the second of 3 wide receivers that you picked in the draft, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We'll talk about all of that, but your reaction to the draft, how did you feel about Gutekunst's first draft as GM of the Packers and just the draft in general?
I could definitely sense a totally different tone. It just felt different, and I was very happy with how the draft went down for the Packers. Although in that first round, like you alluded to it, when we dropped down way out of the 14th spot, we were scratching our heads like, what in the heck is going on? And then we moved back up, and then we still get Jair Alexander, the cornerback that we needed, help with cornerbacks. So we took 2 in a row. What the heck?
Yep.
And so the fact that we were able to do those wheelings and dealings and come away with the extra first round pick for in the future, I thought was a pretty bold move. I don't know if Ted Thompson would have tried that kind of thing, and it could have backfired, but I think it worked out very well. And there's all sorts of rumors flying around that extra first-round pick may come in handy in a trade sometime.
Well, it's interesting because, Gutekunst must have been targeting Jair Alexander all the time. A lot of people have sort of said, hey, Marcus Davenport was on the board, who the Saints took. Derwin James was still on the board. He was falling, went to the Chargers. But, if you're targeting a guy, and cornerback was, as you alluded to, that was a area of need for absolute certainty. And so to go back-to-back is not a bad draft strategy, is it really? And I like the pick in the third of Oren Burks as well, and I think that pick's fortuitous with the Jake Ryan injury too.
Right. It just plays bigger by the day. Feels so bad for Jake Ryan, but
yeah.
Oren Burks, like you said, he may get a lot of action even as a rookie, so hope he's ready.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's start looking at the offense, and we'll start with Aaron Rodgers. And what can you say? There's not much to be said, really. I think, he's arguably the best quarterback in the league. A couple of interesting things that have come out in the preseason. What were your thoughts initially on him calling out the wide receivers?
My initial thought was, whoa. I was a little bit nervous because he hasn't really done that type of thing before. But at the same time, the way he explained it made me feel a lot better about it. I mean, although Aaron Rodgers hasn't said it himself, he's not getting any younger. He's definitely got quite a few good years left, barring any injuries. But it's kind of a now or never kind of mindset. And I think he's taking it upon himself to let people know, look, I know what it takes to win. I need you guys to do that. And we can do it if you all play your part. But some of you really need to pick up the slack. And in the end, I think it's going to pay off really well. It's a little bit different for Aaron Rodgers, but I think it was necessary.
It's interesting. I kind of compared it to Jarvis Landry's drop on Hard Knocks. And, I guess what you could say is, is that sort of thing better done in private or in public? But, Jarvis Landry knew the cameras were on him in Hard Knocks when he stood up in the wide receiver room. And, as a fan, I don't mind it because, sometimes it's funny because we're talking about the 1%. We're talking about the guys right at the very top level of the game. But even then, I think sometimes they kind of need a bit of an ass whooping to sort of sometimes.
A little kick in the pants can't hurt.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, I didn't mind it. I thought it was interesting the names that he mentioned and the names he didn't mention.
Yes, I'm not sure what's necessarily behind that. That part of it may stay behind closed doors, but that was very interesting. And he seems to really like this Camaro guy.
Yeah, I do too. We'll get to him.
Yeah, okay.
Now, probably the biggest story apart from that is that Aaron Rodgers is wanting an extension. He'll probably be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Well, deservedly should be. Will it get done before the start of the season is the big question.
That is the huge question. Every time I think that it's almost done and we're going to get news any moment now, it just gets pushed off. And I guess, there's no super big hurry. Personally, AJ, I would like it to be taken care of before the beginning of the season, just so it's not any sort of distraction at all. But, with that coming up in just a couple of weeks, that's kind of a big ask. So we'll have to wait and see, but it'll get done. And I'm sure Aaron Rodgers, being a very smart man himself, he knows that he can't, mortgage the Packers' entire future on his salary. So I'm sure they're working out some very creative things that we may have never seen in an NFL contract before.
Right. Yep. So, yes, we'll wait with bated breath. Let's go to running backs. So this part of the discussion will probably take the next 40 or 50 minutes. Not quite. But,
I doubt it.
running back. Now, the running back position's been a bit of an enigma for Green Bay, hasn't it? Since Mike McCarthy's been in Green Bay, at quarterback he's had Brett Favre and he's had Aaron Rodgers. So that's a massive green tick there. He's had outstanding wide receivers, big tick. But the backfield has kind of eluded the Packers. They've had an average 18th backfield, and that's including the good years of Eddie Lacy. They had back-to-back years of Ryan Grant, being a top 10 guy, 2008, 2009. But 2017 was injury upon injury. It's a young backfield, but we've got Jamal Williams, we've got Aaron Jones, and we've got Ty Montgomery. And I'm looking for some absolute definitive answers from you, Wayne. I'll put the pressure on. I'm just kidding. Because I don't know if we know. I don't know if anyone knows. Is Jamal Williams the starter? We know Aaron Jones is out the first two.
We do not know. The latest I've heard is that Coach McCarthy says we're going to go with running back by committee, which I know always can cause a little bit of cringing when you hear that. But, I mean, Jamal Williams, he seems like the guy that would be the number one running back. But they're trying so hard with Ty Montgomery to really make him into a beast of a running back. So I wouldn't rule him out. And once Aaron Jones gets back and shakes off the rust, I would expect some great things from him as well. So they're all three so different that maybe running back by committee and just putting in the guy that will best fit the game plan that we're going with at that moment might be the way to go. I'm not sure. This is a head scratcher, and I don't know why the Packers have always, for the longest time, running backs, like you said, something's just not happening.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how I think some teams, some head officers can really pick particular position groups. Green Bay hasn't had a whole lot of luck in the backfield, but these three guys, though, are intriguing, as you said, and they're all different. And I kind of it's a shame that Aaron Jones was a bit of an idiot because it'd be nice if, you could get onto that front foot in the first round. So we won't really see maybe what the whole plan is until round 3 or beyond, until, as you said, until he kicks off the rust. But in my mind, as a non-Packers fan, in my mind, I sort of feel like Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones could complement each other quite a lot. It's just Ty Montgomery. I just don't know where he then fits.
Yeah, it's hard to say because they say that he's even bulkier than he was last year, where he had a full year to really plan on being a running back. But at the same time, we could always throw him in on a pass play. But yeah, it's very, if I had to pick one to be my running back in fantasy, I'd lean toward Aaron Jones, except for the fact that he's not going to be there for the first couple of games and then still be a little rusty. So I don't know what you do.
Right. So it's going to be a little bit of a wait and see, I think. And another position group that's a bit of a wait and see as well is the wide receiver core in ways. Obviously, we've already spoken about Jordy, and he's gone to the Bay Area now. And Aaron Rodgers, rightfully annoyed. I would be, your favourite target, and obviously good friends, and he gets shipped out. He called out rookie wide receivers. We've had 2 poor years from Randall Cobb in terms of injuries. And, granted, there's, Aaron Rodgers was sort of out for a good proportion of last year, but there's a bit of a question mark, I'd say, over Randall Cobb. Devontae Adams is, he's on the verge of being he is a number one guy, really. He's on the verge of really being an elite wide receiver, I would say. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is going to make that happen this year. Geronimo Allison's getting some buzz. He's still unproven. Jake Kumaro is burning up the preseason. And then you've got those 3 rookies, Jamon Moore, Equanimeous St. Brown, and Valdez Scantling. What do you make of this group? So obviously not all these guys are going to make the cut.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. Again, salary cap and all of that, because I would love them all to be able to make the team in some fashion. And I know that the coaches that make those decisions, they do bring preseason into it. I just hope that Jake Kumaro can keep up the action, because that just seems like something has clicked with him this year. I almost thought he was a rookie, but he's just doing great things. So I would love to see him make the team. Equanimeous will probably still be there, but I do think that Devontae Adams is, even though a lot of people did pick up on his great play last year, I think this year Devontae Adams is just going to explode. And it would be a great fantasy wide receiver. Though in the past, when I did actually play fantasy, I have such a hard time, AJ, picking anybody that's not a Packer, which I found out and my son told me would happen. You suck in fantasy football if you only pick from one team. But Devontae Adams is amazing. And Geronimo, who doesn't want to see some long bomb touchdowns and get to yell at their TV, Geronimo? Who doesn't?
Oh, my word. Yeah, and fingers crossed for Kumaro, because he has just, as we said, he's just burning up the preseason. And, you got to love the story. It feels a little bit to me like if you don't drop the balls that Aaron is putting in the air, and if you can have a bit of a connection, you run your routes the way you should, then Rodgers is going to trust you, and you're going to see quite a bit of ball in that sense. It feels like Rodgers is the kind of quarterback, it's all about the connection with him.
I totally agree. And I think Kumuro, we're still getting used to it. I think that he's done his homework on those exact topics that you brought up. And so he's doing the exact things that he knows will make Aaron Rodgers and the Packers happy. And let's see what happens.
Oh, look, it'll be a great story. And there's been plenty of guys like this that have sort of risen from obscurity. I think Wes Welker comes to mind pretty readily.
Yeah, so it could be one of those magical stories, magical seasons. I know that preseason is preseason, but sometimes that's where you find the gems in the rough for sure.
Oh, my word. Now, I was going to say, not lack of depth is not the word I'm looking for at wide receiver, but maybe with the young, sort of slightly unproven wide receiver core, someone like Jimmy Graham is a fantastic addition to the Packers this year. He closes the door on Seattle and he opens the Packers' door. Last year in Seattle, he had 57 receptions for 520 yards and 10 touchdowns, which is probably the most, the most appealing stat of that. He looks like he's in excellent shape. He's going to be a target in the red zone, a really dominant target in the red zone. What does he bring to the offense, do you think? And, what do you think that, as I sort of said before, do you feel like this is going to be the year where we finally say that Green Bay, is utilizing a tight end?
I definitely think this is the year that's going to finally happen, because not only just having a good or really good tight end can take some of the pressure off of the wide receivers, having a great tight end that, you just keep reading every week. Jimmy Graham's saying more and more great things about Aaron Rodgers, that he loves Aaron Rodgers, at least at this point. So I really think that it is going to work. And then, of course, having Mercedes Lewis, another tight end, big, huge man that we brought in from the Jaguars. I mean, he's no slouch either. And if we go out there and do some two tight end sets, say that 5 times fast, and put Graham and Lewis both out there, and then I don't know if it could be stopped.
Oh, yeah. Look, I think it's going to be actually really, really surprising. I think it's going to be a revelation. Well, it's going to be transformative to that offense. Let's talk a little bit about the O-line, which is obviously very, very important.
Yes, indeed.
We want to keep Rodgers off the turf, and obviously we want to get the running game some traction.
Yes.
Now, coming into 2018, Pro Football Focus, however you rate them, actually ranked this line at number 9. When healthy, which is maybe the buzzword, they're one of the best pass blocking O-lines in the league. Brian Bulaga recovering from a torn ACL, could miss the start of the season. Bakhtiari's been named All-Pro the past 2 seasons. You've got left guard Taylor Lane and centre Corey Lindsay have both been solid. Jari Evans took the spot vacated by Lang last season, but he hasn't been re-signed. Is Justin McCray the guy to take the right guard spot?
Ooh, I wish I knew. I think that he wants to, and he very well could. It's so tough for me to say. I really don't know. But it's interesting that Pro Football Focus did rank us. I didn't think they would rank us actually quite that high for the O-line. So maybe we're not sneaking under everybody's noses as much as I thought we were. But yeah, like you said, the key is staying healthy and keeping Aaron Rodgers upright. And if the running game can get traction, look out. But it's good to see that, once they shake off a little bit more of their lingering injuries, Bulaga and Bakhtiari will definitely help set the tone.
Yes. And I mean, it's all about protecting Rodgers at the end of the day, because we know what happens when he goes out. So that's
Thanks for that reminder.
Yeah.
Again.
Sorry about that.
I know. You had to, AJ. You had to.
I had to. But hey, let's talk about something. I mean, look, we're being positive right across the board, really. But let's talk about something else really positive, and that's Mike Pettin. Let's go across to the defense, because the D of recent years has been not great. Below average actually is probably fair. Below average.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Not the worst, but, also not great. 26th in scoring D, 22nd in yards allowed, 17th against the run, 23rd against the pass, 28th in third down defense. So none of those numbers are really sort of good, basically.
No. And Aaron Rodgers did his best and the rest of the offense to help overcome that and cover it up, but you can't hide it.
Oh, yeah. And all you need really for this Packers team, theoretically to be a championship level team is just an average D. If they just get to 16th in those stats, the Packers will be marching into the playoffs, you'd think, easily.
Oh, yeah. And just having the new defensive coordinator brings a new style. And, of course, they're keeping it hidden during the preseason, obviously, because people are still running the ball pretty well against us. But the fact that we brought in Wilkerson, and I do think this is the year that Kenny Clark is going to be one of the big stars or maybe the star of our defense.
Yeah, now, so obviously Mike Pettin's coming in for Dom Capers. He was DC for 9 years, which is another hallmark of this Packers organization too, isn't it? They don't jump off. Some organizations will jump off coaches and assistants every other year. But, I like that. I like that in an organization. But it was time for a change. And Mike Pettin does bring some cred into the building for sure. And that is going to be a strength. The D-line is going to be a strength, isn't it? You mentioned Kenny Clark, Mike Daniels, Mo Wilkerson, of course, and Dean Lowry, who's coming up as well. So that I think is going to be probably the strength it probably will be the strength of the defense, that D-line.
Exactly. And just with Don Capers, everything was great at the very beginning, but I just think that his particular style of defense just didn't work anymore. And so we were doing the same old, and it just wasn't going to work. So when we missed the playoffs, I think that was, the Packers not in the playoffs, that's the type of thing that sets off alarms, and with the players as well as the coaches in the front office. So yeah, having a strong defensive line, I'm excited to see what they do. And the fact that we have 2 divisional games right out of the gate, hosting the Bears and then the Vikings, I think we'll really get to see some great stuff to start off the football season.
Actually, what a start.
Yes.
The Bears are an up-and-coming franchise, for sure.
Right.
And the Vikings, wow. They're on a Super Bowl push, so they're looking pretty solid front to back.
Well, yeah, they do have a good defense. And, as a diehard Packers fan, you've probably heard it on the Packers Fan Podcast, the Vikings, they're good, but I don't think they're near as great as they and their fans think they are. The only reason that they went into the playoffs last year was because they broke Aaron Rodgers. The Packers were well in first place until that game where the Vikings knocked out Aaron Rodgers. And so I don't expect the Vikings to repeat what they did last year by any means. Yeah.
Look, Wayne, you're a Packers fan. I don't expect any Vikings love whatsoever. It's all good. It's all good. Now, this was probably the big question in the draft, and I know that cornerback was definitely a need, but pass rush as well. So skipping on Marcus Davenport for Jair Alexander, well, he made the choice. Gutekunst made the choice, and that's fine. But pass rush is still a bit of a question mark. You've got Clay Matthews and Nick Perry. Hope, they can stay healthy, and behind them, Fackrell, Bagel, and Gilbert. But it's not, it's not the best pass rush in the world. Hopefully they can kind of stay on the park.
That's probably the best way to put it, AJ. With Clay Matthews, health is key. And they've, in some ways, messed him around so much. Is he inside? Is he going to play outside? Where are we going to put him this year? So I don't even know. And a lot of it may hinge on these rumors of getting somebody on the defense from Oakland. So we'll see if that ever happens. And if it doesn't, we do move forward with the guys we have. And can we do it without a pass rush is a question. Because as a longtime Packers fan, I long for the days when we had a great pass rush and we'd see Reggie White in there just knocking guys down, hoping for those days again.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Sorry. Actually,
well, first my bubble.
Who knows? In this modern NFL, who knows? And we all have frustrations as fans, but I think a lot of Raider Nation are just like, get the deal done. Come on, it's ridiculous. But who knows? Who knows? Hopefully, that's not. Raider fans we'll be crying for months, years maybe, if it happens.
That might make it worth it. Just for that. I mean, we do have a couple of first-round draft picks that we can dangle in front of their eyes and tantalize John Gruden before they get ready to become the Las Vegas Raiders.
Right, that's right. Now, the linebacker core, obviously Jake Ryan is gone for the season,
Ouch.
Which is, that's a blow. Blake Martinez was fantastic last year, out of the box. So I presume he's got the dot on the helmet in the middle of that defense. And Oren Burks now, instead of being a little bit of depth and a rotational guy, probably needs to be a full-time starter, and then Nick Perry on the other side of him. But I'm a big fan of Martinez. He's a fantastic player. But now depth is a little bit of a concern in the middle there.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they're going to do, how they're going to work with it. I mean, do you have some ideas? Are you the main Falcons fan, or is that G?
That's G. Yep.
Oh, okay. Who's your team? Chargers?
Raiders.
Oh, okay. I should have watched some of my things I said.
No, don't be silly. But I tell you what, I mean, Navarro Bowman is just on the street. And in my mind, he's a guy who has got so much left in the tank. I think he's 29. He's not an old guy, and he would be great in the middle of that Packers D, in my mind.
I am just hoping for somebody to really surprise us. One of these names that we're not as familiar with, just have somebody really make a statement and come out of nowhere. I mean, every year, every team has somebody on defense that surprises them. And I don't know who it might be, but I'm keeping my eyes peeled. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. Now,
I just don't know.
Yeah, there's so many question marks. I think, it's less the case with some teams than with others. There's certainly a lot of question marks with the Packers. And I have the faith that they're going to be good, but we just don't know how it's all going to be set up. I think that's really the big thing.
Yeah, and with it being preseason, so much is still a secret. And like you said, just vanilla offense, especially vanilla defense. So we'll know in a couple of weeks, or at least we'll get a feel for what's going on. But that won't stop me from watching the last two preseason games.
Oh, of course. Now, let's go to the backfield, because a fair bit of movement, and I didn't mention in the movements out the building, obviously Morgan Burnett, who's a departure, and also Demarius Randall, who Mike McCarthy admitted should have been really playing safety instead of cornerback, and I mean, that's what he's doing now. And he's gone. So, Clinton-Dix, described his season last year as disappointing himself, and he needs to take on a bit of a bigger leadership role now with those departures. And then, of course, you've got those rookies. But what's that defensive backfield looking like? Oh, I should also mention, obviously, the re-signing of Tramon Williams and Devon House.
Those were very important re-signings. And we saw Tramon Williams on that pick six at the very beginning of the Steelers game just last week. And it's like, welcome back to the pack. We're very, very happy to have you back. And it's good to see that Clinton-Dix is kind of admitting that, when Aaron Rodgers got injured last year and things just were happening with Brett Hundley and losing games and playoff hopes disappearing for the first time in close to a decade, that I think Clinton-Dix it was asking too much to expect him to just lead the defense to victory. But, after an off season and examining everything and taking on more of a leadership role, I'm happy that he's still with the team, and I'm excited to see what he may do this year.
You mentioned Brett Hundley. I might just circle back to him just quickly. When he was drafted by the Packers, and he had quite a good sort of pedigree in college, and it seemed like quite a nice sort of depth pick, quite a nice sort of safety net for Aaron Rodgers, and maybe a guy that, developing him behind Aaron Rodgers would be someone that you'd be able to kind of deal later on. But I don't feel like his performance last year was very good. Like he was disappointing, really.
Very disappointing, very frustrating. And it's interesting because every year in the preseason, he shows flashes of brilliance. And we're like, okay, I feel good this year. He's looking really good in preseason. And then those games when he had to fill in for Aaron Rodgers, there were some good points, but it was, like you said, very disappointing. Now, this year, again in preseason, he's looking really good, but in a different way. So I think something might have clicked. And hopefully he won't fool us for a third time, and hopefully we don't have to find out.
Yeah.
But he just seems even more with it this year. And after all of his great years at UCLA, we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe he's playing extra well and learning a lot of things because he knows maybe he will be on the trading block. And he may even be looking forward to being traded, get a chance to maybe start somewhere. Who knows?
The big question, Wayne, really is, how are the Packers going to go this year? I mean, with Rodgers under center, obviously the prospects are so much better. But what are your expectations in terms of their record?
What a loaded question.
Yeah, it is very much.
Here's how I'll phrase it. And
Okay.
without my co-host Troy here to bring his analytical angle, I look at the schedule and really and truly, barring injuries, because we all saw what happened with injuries, looking at the schedule, I don't see why we cannot win every single one of these games. Truly and honestly, we can march into New England and beat what's left of the Patriots. We can march into L.A. and beat the Rams, though that one's going to probably be the toughest one of the year. But I think we can win every single game.
Wow. Well, that's fine. That's fine. I think that this is a definitely a very, very strong team, and they're going to be in the playoffs for sure, barring injuries, barring any changes. On paper, that's always going to be the case with Aaron Rodgers under center, isn't it?
Yes, and for equal time, I do believe that in our schedule release episode of the Packers Fan Podcast, I believe Troy looked at it and gave an early estimate of 12-4. So
okay,
he's not hoping for quite as great of a record, but we're both, of course, visiting the Super Bowl. So we got that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, just to round us out, Wayne, one of the things we've been asking our guests this preview season is to nominate a locker room guy. So someone that is in the locker room that's just sort of bringing the team together, acting like a little bit of a motivation, a bit of a glue for everybody. And some people have been picking an offensive and a defensive guy. So if you want to go that way, you can, or if there's just one guy that you want to mention that's an obvious one, go for it.
I am going to go with the same man that I picked last year, and he proved that he could really step up, and I think we touched on him earlier. I think Kenny Clark is going to be a big leader, at least for the defense, but I think that he brings a lot and can be really one of the main leaders on the Green Bay Packers this season. Kenny Clark, keep your eye out for him.
Wayne, as always, it's been terrific to chat, and a shame that we couldn't catch Troy, but it's completely understandable, and we'll certainly, if you guys are up for it, we'll do this again next year. I look forward to it.
AJ, thank you so much for having me on the Aussie Guys podcast again this year, and definitely keep Troy and I in mind. We tried wrangling all of our schedules off and on. That for whatever reason, this particular summer has just been bonkers, but I'm glad we were able to get on. G, we miss you being here as well. But the show must go on, and I just appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to chat with you, and I check the weather in your part of Australia all the time when it's so hot here, and I'm just so tired of the summer, and I look at the weather near Melbourne right now. This looks great.
Wow, it's funny to hear a Packers fan sort of pining for winter because your winters are brutal.
Well, since I'm here in Southern California, I'm just always looking forward to our winters. But if the Packers do host a playoff game in Green Bay, Troy will come up from Chicago. I'll make the trek, and I'll find some clothing to protect myself. We'll make it out to Lambeau Field. But in the meantime, Troy is flying out to L.A. and we're going to watch the Packers at Rams game. We're heading out to the Coliseum.
Oh, nice. I forgot you're in Southern California because honestly, do you really even have a winter?
We had snow one day about 3 years ago. We got about an inch of snow 3 years ago.
Really? Wow. That's incredible. Because, I mean, winters in Southern California are gorgeous. It's like, It's sort of like spring, in a lot of other places. It's really very comfortable.
Yes, pretty much most of the time. But if we want to drive about an hour and a half or 2 hours away, we do have mountains, ski resorts, and all that happy stuff as well.
Nice. Perfect. So let me just mention that people can find you at Packers Fan Pod, and they can follow both yourself and Troy. So your Twitter handle is at Wayne Henderson, and Troy Heinritz. Have I said his surname right?
Yes.
Yes,
you got that one right.
Got it.
At Troy Heinritz. Heinz ketchup, Ritz crackers, no E in the middle.
Perfect.
Or no Z in the middle. I forget how he says it.
That's right. And it's PackersFanPodcast.com is your website. Yes. And you guys do a fantastic job. And, it's fantastic that we've hooked up with you guys. Enjoy chatting to you. And, look forward to the next time.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. And if it does turn out to be a Packers-Raiders Super Bowl, we'll have to have you guys on the Packers Fan Podcast and do some smack talk.
Wow, man! I'd probably even fly over for that.
Okay.
If
awesome.
it's a Packers Raiders Super Bowl, man, that would be something. I'm not hopeful of that. I mean, look, I think the Packers have got much more chance than the Raiders. I'd be happy with a sort of an 8-8 season this year, to be honest.
Anything's possible. You have Jordy Nelson.
Yeah, but I am really I'm pumped for Jordy. I don't think he's getting any respect in the national media. I think they're basically saying he's done, and I think it's far from the truth.
Agreed.
Well, on that note, Wayne, let's we can just about tee up and watch the Packers-Raiders preseason game, so it's good timing. So I'll leave you to the rest of your evening, and thanks for joining me once again.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. Looking forward to this season. Cheers,
Wayne. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That was our Packers preview. On deck on my own. I'm missing G. And we missed Troy, the other half of the Packers Fan Pod as well. So anyway, exciting year coming up for the Packers, and certainly lots of change. We have to see what's going on in so many position groups, but we're not far away from being able to get some clarity on that, which will be great. So anyway, hope you're enjoying our team previews. We are getting close to the end of them now, which is, in ways actually a relief. But I hope you've been enjoying them. On behalf of G and myself, thanks for listening. Catch you next time.